We're heading to week 3 here, where we had some good matchups here back in week 2. But Shane, there was really a lot of runaway games this past week, as you had Dakota winning big, Aquin won big after what was a very close game at halftime. Milledgeville was very close pretty much the majority of the way through before they took control in the second half. EPC and Amboy, man, that was a game and a half. Who was expecting that one? I sure wasn't. Du-Pec and West Carroll even at that. Man, some good scores. Obviously, you know, the big one was the Forreston Lena Winslow game, as Forreston was ranked number 5, Lena Winslow number 1. Lena Winslow coming away with a 3-touchdown win.
Yeah, which pretty much goes to what we've kind of been thinking this year. You have Lena Winslow, and then you kind of got the rest of the conference, so to speak, in a little bit of a cluster, and then you have a little bit of a drop-off, and then the rest of the garbage, kind of, so to speak. Whereas last year, it was pretty evident you had 2 top teams. I mean, we might get there by the end of the year, but I'd say right now, Lena Winslow is clearly sitting where we all thought they would be, and then the close games are pretty consistent with what we've kind of thought.
Well, I mean, you take a look at Lena Winslow's schedule, and they're not going to be contested again until possibly, and I say possibly, with EPC, but most likely not till week 9 against Dakota.
Right. I mean, the way EPC has come out the gates, that would be a runaway at this point as well.
Well, that's just it. You take a look at the line play for EPC, I keep hearing that that's the downfall, that's the downfall, that's the downfall. And then you look at the outputs that they put up. They beat East Dubuque, but it wasn't by as much as it could have been. Granted, they did hold East Dubuque to only 70 yards of offense. But then, last week against Amboy, they were down, what was it, 16-12?
Yeah.
Before they finally came back to take it, 26-16.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's one of those scenarios. I mean, you don't know until you're in the huddle if that's one of those scenarios where maybe they've overlooked the first 2 opponents they played. I know one thing, if they do that again this week, they're going to have problems.
Yes. So, obviously, this week we got a lot of good matchups coming up. Should be some interesting things going on with these matchups because, like you said, week 3 is really about that time of the season where we start to figure out who's who and what's what.
Contender and pretender.
Yes. So, we're definitely hitting that stage of the season as we reach the 1/3 way. And
already.
Yeah. But we're going to see what takes place this Friday, so we'll bring you the breakdown right now. AFC at Aquin. AFC comes in this game with an 0-2 record, while Aquin enters this game with a 2-0 record. Shane, last week you were at the game where Dakota beat AFC 49-6, and Aquin came back from a 14-6 halftime lead to put Warren away 43-6.
Yeah, I'd say both teams kind of put on a little bit of a lackluster presentation last Friday. AFC, you know, was battling that number situation. For all intents and purposes, it was quite evident of what we've really been saying for a long time now. Whenever you get the lower end of the Upstate playing a powerhouse in the Northwest, I mean, that game went pretty much as we thought it would, except that maybe a little bit faster because, you know, the opening kick went 75 yards to the house and AFC was done. And then with Aquin and Warren, what, you know.
Well, I mean, you take a look, and I was able to get part of the first half of the Aquin-Warren game, and I mean, it was very evident that Ethan Williams and Garrett Williams were a big match for Warren, that Aquin just could not come to stop regularly, but really it was their offense that they just could not get going. I mean, they had one drive that ended at the 1-yard line that Warren stopped for them.
Yeah,
right there.
That was in the second quarter, early second quarter there. I think Warren shut the door there, and you know, next thing you know, that was out of tie. I think that was a tie game at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Aquin eventually put things together in the second half and rolled away with the way they should have, though.
Right, and you take a look too. Aquin is going to have the return of Logan White this week. He finally was cleared of his concussion injury from last year against Forreston. So he is going to be able to return to Aquin's lineup. He brings a new dynamic and a different dynamic to the Bulldogs, which could really propel them into the future as we look forward down the road here too.
Right. I mean, anytime you get a player back like that, it's an automatic boost, really. So.
As far as AFC, I mean, really right now everything's been about Caleb McBride. Whether it be throwing the ball, running the ball, it's all about McBride. Yep. AFC needs to get other people to step up and play to get to where they want to be. I mean, that's basically all it comes down to is how bad do you want it, and are you going to go out there and give it everything you got?
Right, and I mean, last week was one of those games where effort wasn't necessarily an issue. I mean, you can have the effort, but if the talent's not there, the talent's not there. AFC won't be facing Dakota this week, but I mean, they're going to see a physical up front team in Aquin this week again. So I mean, it doesn't get any easier as far as that regard.
Right. So
Aquin at home for me.
Yeah, I mean, with the recent play of Ethan Yount, Will Gustafson, you bring back Logan White, and then you still got the others like Patrick Cease and Brennan Carlson and a few others in there, Grayson DeMichael. I just don't see where Aquin loses this ball game. Warren at Orangeville. Shane Warren comes in with an 0-2 record as anticipated from the get-go from the start of the season, while Orangeville enters with a 1-1 record where we really expected them to be 2-0 at this point. Last week, Warren lost that game, as we already mentioned, to Aquin 43-6, while Orangeville came up with a big win in our Upstate game of the week, 38-6 over River Ridge. Shane, last year, Orangeville won this matchup 46-0. Of course, this game is going to be played on Saturday afternoon in Orangeville at 3 p.m., so again, another Saturday game, another opportunity for people to come out and watch Orangeville play.
Yeah, and for Orangeville's purposes, hopefully it goes a little better than the first Saturday game. They might not like playing on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, Orangeville's really, reeling and feeling good after that win Friday night against River Ridge. Our game of the week and kind of didn't really prove to be so much, but that's the way it goes sometimes. I mean, realistically, going in that game, Orangeville needed a bounce back, and they got it big. I mean, they had to have that win.
Well, it's one of those things, too, exactly like you stated. I mean, if you want to make the playoffs, you better win that game.
Right.
I mean, both teams, Orangeville and River Ridge, needed it, but really, Orangeville needed it more than River Ridge, and they came out and made a statement in that one, and they just dominated the line of scrimmage all day long, which was one of the things that River Ridge needs to work on.
Right.
I mean, they got the skill everywhere, and we'll talk about River Ridge later on, but Orangeville just brought it last week. Right. And with it, 247 yards rushing from Garrett Rodeball. I mean, if they can get more of that type of play and that physical line play, they can definitely still be a contender for that Upstate title come the end of the year.
Right, and that's just it. I mean, we had a lot of people ready to jump off the Orangeville bridge, after their game against Polo. But, you look at the schedule for Orangeville going forward. You got a very winnable game against Warren to put you 2-1. And then on the backside of that, I think you got AFC. So, you look at the schedule going into the season. Orangeville probably, they should be disappointed that they're not going to be looking at that towards that 4-0 start. But, things happen. Polo took advantage of a gift, really, by Orangeville, and, you can't blame them.
Well, that's it. And, I mean, you look at Orangeville's schedule, just like last year, the meat of the schedule's in the back half. Last year, they got out to a 3-1 start. They definitely need to get out to a 3-1 start this year because their non-conference game is against Toledo-Cumberland, who is a playoff team from last year. They're still pretty good. I don't think that they're as good as, say, a Lena Winslow or a Forreston, but they're still there. They're good. They're going to give Orangeville a good game looking down the road. You still have East Dubuque. You struggled to a win against East Dubuque last year. Can that game be a difference maker for you again this year? And then, of course, you got Aquin. We're still trying to figure out where Aquin's going to fall. I mean, we expected a drop-off. They haven't really jumped out to great things, but they have made some big contributions. They've gotten some very good wins, but they're exactly where we thought they would be to start the season.
Right, and then on the reverse side of that, it's been a tough start for Warren, but, they had a good first half showing against Aquin last week, and, they need that grit and toughness against Orangeville to start out this game.
Right, and I agree. I mean, you got the play of Ethan Williams and Garrett Williams and Reed Raisbeck. I mean, those three have really stood out the most to me so far. And if they can keep playing hard and tough the way they have each of the last 2 weeks, I mean, they're doing exactly what Coach Teskey was asking of. Come out and play hard and give your best effort, and we'll go from there. And Warren is doing that.
Right. I mean, that kind of took a lot of people by surprise last weekend. But listening to the radio, it sounded like a team that was, not fundamentally outmatched, which is a good place to start if you're a Warren Warrior fan.
Right, I agree. But I have Orangeville this week.
I do as well.
Polo at Metro East Lutheran. Shane, last year this game was a 55-6 romping by Polo in Polo. This year Polo has to return the favor. They have to drive all the way down to Edwardsville for a Friday night matchup at 7 o'clock. About a 5.5, 6 hour bus ride. But Polo comes in this game with a 1-1 record with that surprise win in week 1 over Orangeville, while Metro East Lutheran comes in with an 0-1 record. The reason why they're 0-1 is they had to cancel their week 1 game against Chicago Hansberry. So last week their 40-8 loss to Dubuque was their first game of the year, where Polo lost to Milledgeville 26-8. Shane, I'm going to keep my end of this short. If Braden Solto and Brady Webb and Tucker Mumford and Ethan Phillips all show up to play like they did against Orangeville in week 1, I don't see why this can't be another 55-6, 55-0 type win.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to keep this rather short myself and cliche. Start the bus, get on the bus, get off the bus, get on the field, do your business on the bus, come home 2-1. Really that simple. Do your business. I mean, not a lot of people had Polo 2-1 at this point if they win Friday. So, I mean, they're in a good place, and I like the way they're going.
Well,
and they didn't get throttled by Milledgeville.
No, they did not. They played very tough with Milledgeville, which was great to see.
Right.
I mean, I honestly, after seeing what they did with Orangeville, I was very impressed with the fact that they were finishing plays, not just a couple players, but all 11. It's one of the things that we brought up last week. I mean, Orangeville was finishing plays, Polo was finishing plays. I'm pretty sure Polo still brought that mentality last week to Milledgeville, and we already know that Milledgeville is one of the more physical teams in the Upstate side of the conference.
Right, and I mean, I look for this to happen all season long. I mean, how many times haven't we stated this is Polo's last season? This is a proud group of kids. I mean, they don't want to be known as, they were the Polo team that couldn't end up in the playoffs. I mean, looking ahead, they still have Warren and they still have AFC on the schedule after this point. Get to 2-1, and then you got to toss up somewhere in there, between Aquin and, Stockton and maybe EPC, see what the heck happens.
Right, exactly. I mean, so Polo's doing exactly what they should be doing. They're going out, they're fighting, they're playing hard. That's all you can ask for. This one is a game that we definitely had in favor of Polo to begin with, so this is not going to be a shock at all. So if they get to 2-1, that's great. Like you said, you still got Warren and AFC. There's 2 more wins, and then who knows what can happen against the rest later down the road. Polo is my pick to win. Shane, we got an interesting crossover match here where we have Galena come in with an 0-2 record, traveling to Hanover to take on River Ridge with their 1-1 record. Last year, this was a game that River Ridge won 8-3. However, last week, Galena lost to East Dubuque 14-7, while River Ridge really did not show up in a game we thought that would be closer than it was, losing to Orangeville 38-6.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a surprise, getting the score updates on the sideline of the game I was at. That one kind of got ugly and out of hand in a hurry there. Not really a good showing by River Ridge for any intents and purposes. So definitely looking to rebound this week, especially for a team that has playoff expectations this year.
Right, and I agree with that. I mean, you look at what River Ridge had, and like we stated already, I mean, they did not get a big game from their offensive and defensive lines. They need to get that play moving forward. Hopefully this was a wake-up call for them so they're not getting their tails kicked in more so down the road, because they have the skill players to make things happen, but without the line, you're not going to get it done.
Right, and that's just it. I mean, your line, how many teams don't we see that the line is crucial to their success? River Ridge has already, I was looking at this, they've already played AFC. They've got Galena this week and more next week. After that, things get a little bit difficult for River Ridge. I mean, they need to take advantage here if they can.
Yeah, no, they definitely need to be at 3-1 entering their week 5 matchup with Stockton, because then they got Polo the week after that, and we've already seen what Polo can do. They surprised an Orangeville team that we did not expect them to surprise.
And, we're talking about high school kids. I mean, it doesn't always transpire that way on paper, but I know in the mentality-wise of a high school kid that, River Ridge could look at Polo and think, oh, wow, they beat Orangeville. We just got smacked by Orangeville. I mean, that's a mentality thing there, too. So, I mean, not only are you fighting that, but you got to put the wins where you can, because you look at the schedule and you see teams that have beat teams that you've lost to. That's an obstacle to overcome.
Right, exactly. I agree with you there. So, I mean, with River Ridge, obviously they've had the play of Jacob Spear, Drew Kloss, Wyatt Hammer, Ben Christ, and Cam Kiley. Those are, and then you throw in Nick Parr as well. Those guys need to come up. They need to have big plays. They need to keep the ball moving. Like we already stated, the offensive line needs to go. For Galena, you got Henry Anderson at quarterback. Obviously, we were not very impressed with the showing against Dakota in week 1.
Right.
Not so sure how it transpired last week, but obviously they had a very close game with the East Dubuque that we saw was pretty much an even matchup per se. But they're going to need, again, that leadership that he was expressing in the offseason needs to be there this week. You got Connor Einsweiler, Kieran Duplessis, Peyton Bauer. Those guys need to step up and have a big game this week as well to get Galena into the win column.
Right, and that's just it. I mean, talking to a few people about Galena, because we haven't had the opportunity to see them yet, they are improved even though their first week match didn't show that. I mean, to me, that just shows where Dakota is kind of headed in that direction, whereas last week kind of tells me where Galena actually is and moving forward. I mean, this game here will tell me more about Galena rather than the first week against Dakota, because, I mean, the talent gap there is obvious. This game, however, will tell me where Galena is at and where they're going.
Right. So it should be a really good game. I expect, once again, another even matchup, and really, you could go either way with this. Right. Who you got?
I'm going to take Galena on the road for their first win.
I am taking the Wildcats at home because I still believe that this team can make the playoffs, and they need to make it this year before they go to 8-man football. Moving to the Northwest Conference, we have our first matchup as Amboy taking on West Carroll in Savannah. Shane, Amboy comes in with an 0-2 record, as anticipated, while West Carroll comes in with a 1-1 mark. However, last week Amboy lost a good, hard-fought contest to EPC, which was a huge surprise, 26-16. And West Carroll held on to beat Du-Pec 6-0. And this is a game, Shane, last year that West Carroll won 28-6. But if you remember correctly, the year before, it was Amboy that put the pounding on West Carroll.
Yeah, realistically, you could make an argument that these teams are pretty even. I mean, going into the season, we didn't ever said that to this point. But, I mean, a close game with Amboy with Milledgeville and EPC tells me a lot more than a shellacking to Lena Winslow in a close game to Du-Pec.
No, I agree. And I mean, I honestly,
I give you riff and text, sometimes, and I think collectively we've expected more out of West Carroll at this point than what they've shown. However, we have also covered Du-Pec to know that they are not exactly just a rollover and die team.
No. I mean, that's the one thing that we keep bringing up, and we told everybody last year Du-Pec's coming. There was no doubt about it. You could see it. Well, I wouldn't say they've arrived per se,
no,
but their level of play has arrived.
Right.
As they have definitely showed up with more physicality coming out the box to start the year.
Right, and I mean, had West Carroll played a team that can find the end zone more consistently than what Du-Pec can, they are 0-2 at this point. I mean, Du-Pec had a chance to beat West Carroll last week. Had a drive die, late in the game for unsportsmanlike penalty, I believe it was, and West Carroll walks away with a win, but they were not stopping them on the drive.
Well,
that's an issue. I mean, we kind of anticipated Galena Winslow shellacking because that's a whole other animal. But West Carroll has some issues. You know, they got Amboy and then they got Stockton next week. So I mean, West Carroll really needs a win here.
Yeah, they definitely need to get a win here because, like you said, then they got Stockton, and if they don't beat Stockton, West Carroll may not make the playoffs.
Right.
And you take a look, like you said, I mean, with Derek Tracy and Michael Popkin, those two have really showed up so far, but West Carroll has not been able to get the run game going whatsoever, and they need their line play to improve, and it seems to be a repeating segment here. Line play, line play, line play. If you don't have the line play, you're not going to win the game.
Well, I think we could realistically, cross off one team on that, and we would still be talking about line play. I mean, Winslow's line is, what they are. The rest of the team's line play, line play, line play. It's a huge flaw of West Carroll. I mean, they're undersized, and we knew that Du-Pec was physical. I mean, that aspect wasn't really a surprise.
Right? I mean, and if you take a look with Amboy, I mean, they come out, they played hard against Milledgeville. They pretty much gave Milledgeville everything they could handle in the first half. And then they kind of hit a snowball effect in the second half of that one right after the kickoff return. Last week, they played with EPC. They get the lead against EPC in the third quarter. And, I mean, you got to be sitting there in Clipper Nation going nuts thinking, oh, my gosh, we're going to beat EPC. And these two clowns have EPC ready to go 7-2 on the year.
Right. I mean, as far as this game, I'm kind of at a crossroads. My heart tells me one thing, my mind tells me another as far as who to pick with this game. So, I mean, where do you go?
Right. Well, I'll go ahead and pick who I think is going to win. And I still like the physicality that the Thunder have, so I am going to take West Carroll.
Yeah, I like West Carroll at home, too. Getting to that 2-1 mark. They definitely need it.
Du-Pec at EPC. Shane, one team comes in at 0-2, the Rivermen. The other team comes in at 2-0, the Wildcats. Last week, Du-Pec lost that close game that we just talked about, West Carroll 6-0, where EPC won 26-16 against the game we just got done talking about against Amboy. Last year, EPC won this game 48-0, but I'll be the first one to throw it out there. I don't expect that kind of ball game this year.
No, and for me, if you were to flop each other's schedule at this point, you could easily have Du-Pec 2-0 and EPC at 0-2 at this point. So, I mean, on paper, it looks like another beatdown from years past, but that's not the case. I will go ahead and say this now, that if EPC has a performance the way they have the first 2 weeks, they will lose.
No, I agree with that statement because, again, what we thought EPC was going to be was explosive, especially with the new offense that Coach McNutt brings. Really felt that it would fit with the skill players that they have. So far, they've struggled with their line play, which was not something we necessarily thought would happen. I mean, we knew their line had gotten a little bit softer, but they still return a lot of players that have experience on the line that just aren't picking up that aspect of the game.
And, I mean, EPC is a little banged up, too. I mean, that goes a long way at this stage of the game as well.
Right, it does. I mean, you got a couple kids that are hurt. One's out for the season. So that does make issues happen, especially in small school football. But, I
mean, this is, not to cut you off, but this is the EPC team we've been talking about for 3 years as to this is the year. And you got to ask yourself, where the heck are they?
Right. No, and you got Jaden Kemple's doing a great job so far. I mean, he's got just over 200 yards rushing on the season, so he's tipping over 100 a game. But who else there is leading the charge for them? I mean, you can't rely on just one back to get you everything. And if they're not going to get the line play better, then the passing game needs to be able to pick up to where the line can at least do the easy 1, 2, 3 hold and get the pass off before somebody gets killed.
And I mean, if you're watching right now, you're probably thinking, holy smokes, you know, EPC's barn's on fire. I mean, EPC is still 2-0. They have a good chance to go 3-0 before the schedule really does tighten up here.
Right. I mean, because you take a look at EPC's schedule, they got Forreston and then Galena Winslow in back-to-back weeks, week 4 and 5.
That's ouch.
Yeah. I mean, that could put them in a hurting in a hurry.
Right.
But, you know, let's take a look at Du-Pec. I mean, with Du-Pec, they've done a great job defensively thus far. I mean, I've been really, like I keep stating, their physicality is just improving. They're coming to hit people. And if you take a look defensively, you know, against Forreston, yeah, they gave up 321 yards rushing. But most of those yardage didn't come until the second half of the game. And it wasn't until the fourth quarter when, you know, the physicality of the game just became too much, and Forreston's conditioning probably was just too much.
Right. I mean, Du-Pec is headed in the right direction. I've told you this.
I believe.
Talked to Coach Hoffman as well. You know, Du-Pec's first 3 games, Forreston, West Carroll, and EPC. Out of those games, they needed to find 1 win, realistically.
Yep.
If they can pull off a game against EPC, I will sit here and tell you right now this will be a 5-4 playoff team. But they got to find a way to beat EPC.
They got to find a way. I mean, and that's one of the struggles for Du-Pec is they only have 275 yards of offense through 2 games so far. So they're doing it defensively, but they got to find a way to get the ball moving in order to put points on the board. Because if they can't do that, I mean, if you look against West Carroll, yeah, they had 173 yards and held West Carroll to only 137, but they only had 102 against Forreston.
Right, you got to get it in the end zone.
What do you got?
EPC at home, close game.
I agree. I think EPC wins this game. I would not be surprised to see Du-Pec come away with an upset, though. Galena Winslow comes in with that 2-0 record and the #1 ranking, which we expect them to keep after they beat Forreston last week 30-16, and they are traveling to East Dubuque, who has a 1-1 record after they picked up their first win of the year last week, 14-7 against Galena. Shane, this was a contest last year where Galena Winslow won 59-0. I think it was almost one of those games where East Dubuque got off the bus, saw Galena Winslow in front of them, and packed their bags before the game kicked off.
Well, the good part is this week they don't have to get on the bus. I mean, you can get scared at home, I guess. Not to be mean or anything, but, you know, East Dubuque got that win. 1 more win than we already gave them, and there's a lot of football left to be played. And, I mean, this is a team that, you know, firmly believes in that 8-1, 7-2 mark, so, I mean, they had to start somewhere.
Well, I mean, you take a look at, you know, where East Dubuque is. I mean, obviously they haven't really been very consistent, but when you can get the ball in Lane Boyer's hands, and you got John Breitbach at the quarterback position, same guys we keep talking about. Boyer, Breitbach, Breitbach, Boyer.
Right.
I mean, obviously East Dubuque has a few other players, but this is a team that their line play is not there. And they need to get that line play there because you have, again, this is like River Ridge 2.0. You have skilled players, very good skilled players. Where's your line? And now you got Galena Winslow, who has one of the best lines in the entire state.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, but like how we have mentioned, this is our 7th game preview, and I'm pretty sure we've mentioned line play in every single game. That is one thing that we will not have to talk about with Galena Winslow. I mean, that's hands down one of the best lines in 1A and 2A. Realistically, East Dubuque needs to find a way to somehow manage that. I don't know that that's possible.
Well, here's the problem I see happening is East Dubuque is going to resort to throwing the ball because, in all honesty, Galena Winslow is going to shut down their run.
Right. I mean, Galena Winslow has struggled with pass defense.
So, if East Dubuque can get passes completed to gain yardage and keep the clock running, but all at the same time, which is hard to do in a passing offense, but at the same time slow the pace of the game down,
right.
They could keep themselves in the game. But when you got Sean Ormston running at you, you got Isaiah Bruce running at you, you got Keegan Geelan running at you, Ronnie Valentine's been getting some carries. I just don't see it happening.
I don't either. That's why I'm going to take Lena Winslow on the road. I don't think it'll be 59-0. Somewhere along the lines of 52-0, maybe.
Well, I like Lena Winslow too, and it's going to be a clocker final score. Who knows, but it'll be a runner. Our Upstate game of the week brings us to Stockton, where the Blackhawks come in with a 2-0 record, and they are going to play host to the Milledgeville Missiles, who also bring the same 2-0 record. Last week, Milledgeville beat Polo 26-8 in what we thought was a little bit closer of a matchup before Milledgeville took control, while Stockton easily wiped the bed with South Beloit as expected, 59-0. Last year, Stockton won this matchup 22-20 in a game that we had both picked Milledgeville to win. Milledgeville had the lead late in the fourth quarter before Stockton took it over late on a touchdown. How? But
Upstate game of the year, by the way. Not
yes.
Game of the week.
That's where I was just going to go. This is definitely going to be game of the year for the Upstate Conference. Definitely see conference title implications on the line in this matchup.
Right. Well, if you're Milledgeville, it's pretty simple. Realistically, I mean, we've gone over this every week. You stop Colin Dubuque, you stop Stockton. However, that has proved to be rather difficult.
Yeah.
But that's what Milledgeville has to do here. I mean, you stop Dubuque. I mean, people in Stockton probably don't like us to say that. They don't like a lot of what we have said over the years about Stockton, but we are right on this, and I'll take it to the bank. You stop Dubuque, you hold him under 150 yards, Milledgeville wins this game.
I would say that would be rather accurate. I mean, we saw what happened last year in the playoffs. I mean, he ran 41 times against Aquin.
They still lost.
But they lost because Aquin was able to shut things down at the right times in that game.
Right.
And took advantage of it offensively. So, I agree. And I mean, Dvorak's already got 400 yards rushing. Their next best rusher has 114.
Let's not forget that.
Right.
They're they're not necessarily one-dimensional in what they do. They are one-dimensional in their running game.
Yes, I mean, you take a look, and you're right. I mean, they've played South Beloit and they've played Warren. And you got Chase Rowe, Tyler Barch, and there was one other one. Anyway, the three of them are all about 114, 112 yards apiece, and then you got Dvorak at 400. Right. But would they be at that high of a level on a closer ball game where they're not getting all these nice carries?
Not even close. I mean, South Beloit and Warren, I'm sorry, but you're looking at probably a collectively, 1 in 17, 0 in 18 season.
Right.
I mean,
no, agreed.
That's the level of competition. It's not Stockton's fault that they don't have Marquette this year, to get rid of the South Beloit crap. I mean, you can only play who's on your schedule, and Stockton's done exactly what they're supposed to. Let's not discount that.
And they've done so impressively. I mean, they've not just done it,
they throttled,
but they've done it the way that they should be doing it.
Right. And I would say opposite of what Stockton's done impressively. Milledgeville's kind of quietly gotten by, so to speak.
Yes, I mean, you take a look, so you got Carson Boyer and Nate Rand there. The only thing that I see is a problem for Milledgeville is their defensive schemes are very predictable because you can see what they do when they're going to blitz, and they do the same things over and over and over. That becomes very easy to game plan against offensively.
Right.
The only thing is they're looking to blitz. Stockton doesn't have Hayden Fox at QB. They have Garrett Buskey. And I'm not saying anything bad about Buskey,
no,
but
those are
here's Fox and here's
exactly.
Buskey. Yeah. And Stockton hasn't thrown the ball yet. And they threw the ball one time 2 weeks ago. They threw 0 balls this last week.
Well, they haven't needed to.
Right.
They're going to need to.
So, yeah, you're going to pound the rock with Dvorak, but Milledgeville's got the defense that can slow him down, shut him down. Maybe not shut him down. He's still going to get yards, obviously, but contain him. So, you take a look at those things, and, I mean, like you said, this is a tough one to pick.
Yeah.
Where Dvorak is the size and strength, Boyer is the speed and the quickness.
Right. I mean, and that's a lot because, I mean, I would personally say that Dvorak's probably the best player in the Upstate side. I mean, that, hands down.
How could you not? I mean, he's the leading rusher
that's
in the conference.
And, I mean, that's something we kind of talked about last year. Like, okay, you want to beat Lena Winslow, shut Valentine down. Well, they played 14 games and nobody was able to do that. So, I mean, you eventually run out of chances to do that. I mean, that might be something we're talking about all year. You shut Dvorak down, you shut Stockton down.
But you got to step up to that challenge, and you got to play, and you got to play smart. I mean, that's one of the things that I could see happening. Milledgeville starts keying on Dvorak, and then all of a sudden, you got Chase Rowe running on a counter trap going the other direction.
Right, or, you know, Milledgeville ends up...
Or Tyler Barge,
you know,
or something.
Stockton hasn't put anything on film, so, you know, you go into that game thinking, no, Stockton can't throw the ball, you suck everybody in, and then the next thing you know, you hit it big.
Well, that's what Carthage did back in 1998. They threw the ball all of 29 teams. Newman's up in the state championship game. Everybody sucking in on the run. Right over top for the game-winning touchdown. Nobody expected it.
You don't have to put it on film in order to be able to do so.
No, you just got to be able to be good at executing. And as long as you can execute, limit mistakes, and take care of the ball, you give yourself an opportunity to win every Friday night.
Right, and I mean, for me on my pick, is, you know, you kind of look at last year, and, you know, that was a narrow win for Stockton. I don't feel Stockton's as good as they were last year. Milledgeville returns everybody. But the way that they've come out the gates kind of negates what I'm thinking about them. I mean, for me, this is a total toss-up, literally.
Okay, well, let's take a look, though. I mean, they put up a more impressive win over Amboy this year than they did last year.
Right.
They actually beat Polo by a bigger spread this year than they did last year. Yes, did they start slow? Yeah. But Polo obviously is doing much better than we gave them credit for.
Right, and that's just it. I mean, Amboy might be better than what we thought or anticipated. I mean, this is all. Our mentality on picking on how we think teams should be is, I mean, premature at this point in the season because you haven't had enough, you know, examples to draw from. Polo could be better than what we thought, and Amboy could be better than we thought. So those smaller scores could just mean that Milledgeville's just had to work a little bit harder than what we thought originally that they would have to do, and you can't fault them for that. For me personally, the more we talk about this, yeah, it was a toss-up, but you know what? I'm just gonna throw it out. I'm gonna take Milledgeville on the road.
I like Milledgeville on the road too. They were my pick to click all season long. They still are my pick to click. Missiles on the road. All right, well, that was an interesting conversation on our Upstate game of the week. So let's go to our Northwest game of the week, where we feature Forreston at Dakota. Shane Forreston with that 1-1 record after they lost to Lena Winslow 36-16, and Dakota at the expected 2-0 record as they beat AFC 49-6. So far, those 6 points are the only 6 points Dakota has given up on the year. However, last year, Forreston won this game 40-0. Now, that's a score that I don't anticipate seeing.
No.
Forreston lost too much for that score to be the same.
Yeah, and, you know, talking to some people and having seen Dakota play, their defense this year is leaps and bounds above where they are last year. Coach Freed will tell you that this is probably the best defensive unit he's had. Linebacking crew that he's had in his tenure, which is saying a lot. I mean, 2016, 15. Right, but 2016, when Forreston won, they still only lost 20-0. I mean, they held Forreston in check for a half, if you don't recall that.
Yep.
And 2015, that was a dominant linebacker crew. And, you know, it's obvious. Dakota's defense has done more than they've needed to in order to win. I mean, you can see it. And on the opposite side of the ball, yeah, I mean, Forreston lost a load, which, I mean, is unfortunate. I mean, they're still not a bad team by any stretch, though.
No, they're not. And, I mean, that's one of the things that I was really impressed upon them last week. I mean, I had one person sit there and say, well, if you look at the last 3 quarters, Forreston won 16-14.
That's a stretch.
Well, if you look at the scoreboard, yeah, that's probably correct, and it is correct. However,
you have to play 4.
You got to play 4 quarters for one, and 2, even though Forreston scored in the second quarter, that was a luck score. That was not a score like they had in the third quarter where they came out and started piss-pounding the ball down Lena's throats.
Right.
Type of score. Lena Winslow dominated that game for more than 2.5 quarters, and they fell asleep in the third quarter, which Lena Winslow's got to quit doing that, but that's a whole nother story. Forreston, though, impressed me because of their fight, their grit. They're still physical. They're still coming hard. And, I mean, they never gave up in that game. They were down 29-0. Other teams,
right,
collapsed. Forreston did not collapse in that game.
Right, and, you know, for me, for this game, something that we really haven't touched on, I mean, Forreston lost a lot, but something that they might, if they're able to hone in, could lead to big things for them, and that's their passing game. I'm sure you noticed in week 1 against Du-Pec, they had how many overthrown balls that, if it would have just been placed perfectly, their scores. You know, they score on that pass play against Lena Winslow. They're going to have to pass the ball against Dakota, I believe, because Dakota's defense, you know, their front line and their linebacking group, for the most part, is going to shut down the run game. So, where Dakota is going to have to improve from last year to this year in order to contain Forreston is that pass defense. I think they're better than they were last year, but that remains to be seen as to how much better.
No, and I agree. And, I mean, you take a look at Forreston's rushing stats through the first 2 weeks, they only have one kid over 100 yards rushing. Over 100 yards rushing in 2 games. And they put up, like I said, they put up 320 yards in the first week against Du-Pec. And the guy that we thought would be the focal point, Garrett Bodiger, is sitting at 89 yards rushing on the year. And it's Ethan Mulder that's actually leading the charge as far as the rushing department is concerned. But Bodiger's still a very key point to Forreston's offense.
Well, and I mean, that just speaks volumes as to last year's line. I mean, we made this comment, you know, kind of jokingly, but it's a serious matter. You know, it makes a world of difference when you got a pretty impressive line blocking for you that'll open up the holes. That's not there this year.
No.
To this point.
It's not. I mean, really, you got Mitchell Hines is your only true returning starter on that line. I mean, you got other guys like Sawyer Wild and a few others, Kyler Henefeld and Zach Cederholm there stepping in the roles. And yes, they can get there, but they haven't yet. And they need to get there. Because if they don't, then they're going to continue to falter against better competition.
Well, and, I mean, you laid out some of Forreston's running goals, and the same could be said for Dakota. I mean, we've talked about Trey Engelbrecht should have a 1,500-yard season for Dakota if they want to get to where they're going. He's got over 150, I believe, but that speaks volumes to their defense because they're giving short fields. I mean, the yardage isn't there if you're starting in, you know, opponent's territory. But this is one of those games where you need your horse to take you to where you want to be. Trey Engelbrecht needs to have a big game for Dakota to win.
Yes, I agree. And I mean, honestly, all I have written down is Engelbrecht and Cassidy. Well, run the ball, get things happening. You got to get the pass game going, I think, at least a little bit, because you're going to have to throw them off. Forreston's going to attack the ball, but that was one of the things that Forreston did not do last week. They did not attack the ball like we're used to seeing. Too many times you would see Isaiah Bruce or Sean Ormiston get out on edge, and sure, the linemen and the linebackers were playing down the line, but the D-backs were backing up. So as soon as they turned the corner, they had an additional 5 yards before anybody was there to even make contact. That cannot happen, and that's an area that Dakota should really be looking at film to take advantage of.
Right, and that's just it. I mean, Forreston's got some things to clean up, and back to the offensive side for Forreston, something we haven't really talked about. The it factor for Dakota's defense, Carter Drake. I mean, you got to keep an eye where he is. I mean, the kid is. I don't even know how to say it. I mean, he can take over defensively.
Right, and I mean, even on the offensive side, you can get him out in free space and get Clark to roll out or drop back. I mean, he can make things happen. And, I mean, this is definitely a very interesting matchup, to say the least. I mean, it's been a while since Dakota's beat Forreston.
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the last time they beat him was 2015. And then they lost to him in the playoffs. So, this is definitely it's not a must-win game for Dakota, but if Dakota wants to get to where they want to be this year, which Coach Free has stated many times, at least a quarterfinal team, this is a game you got to win, because this is a team that you're going to be facing in the first, second, third rounds of the playoffs.
That's true, and I mean, something we haven't mentioned about, but if you've been watching our videos, Dakota hasn't been Dakota in the past how many years. I mean, they got to get past that mentality, and they haven't kept up with Forreston. If they beat Forreston, that'll go a long way in their spirits and hopes for that Week 9 matchup with Lena Winslow. For me, I think they get it done at home, something they haven't done in a while. I think it'll be a very close ball game, but I like Dakota at home.
If they can come out pumped up and not get over-hyped to the point where they're freaking out,
right,
I like the Indians at home as well. All right, so we go to our Player of the Week segment, where last week we had listed 3 players, but moving forward it'll be 2 players, as we just wanted to get the 3 players in our inaugural Player of the Week listing. So this week we have 2 players. Both of these players are going to come from the Upstate side, as they both had really great games. And the first one is Garrett Rodeball, the running back for Orangeville. Big win against River Ridge in our Upstate game of the week. Had 26 carries for 247 yards and 3 touchdowns.
It's a heck of a game.
So, big game there. Obviously, Garrett can keep that going. Orangeville's going to be set for a while.
Right.
On the other side was Aquin's Ethan Yount, as he ran off 226 yards and 3 touchdowns on just 10 carries in a big win for Aquin over Warren in a game that was really close in the first half.
Right, and that's going to be key for Aquin moving forward, because he's not someone that we've given much of the spotlight to. So that's a good sign for the Bulldogs that you have a contributor of that magnitude that we haven't even touched on really that much.
Right, exactly. So, our Player of the Week winners, we actually have now listed up on our website at NUICfootball.com. Go there, you can check it out in the section, and it's POTW. And we have all the previous winners listed there. Also, with the Player of the Week nominations, get to coaches to pick up your awards. It's a t-shirt, a pizza voucher, and a medallion, sponsored by Coaches in Lena, and Hometown Trophies, also of Lena. It's a great thing to have the 2 businesses helping us contribute to giving these awards away for Player of the Week honors.
Right.
So, make sure you get that done, and we look forward to seeing who can come up with the big plays and the big games this week. All right, so that gives you a look at our Week 2 matchups and previews, and kind of recapping on where we feel the games will be this week. I do anticipate some surprises. I anticipate some close scores, and I definitely would anticipate some scores going the way that we think that they should. But this week 3, like you said earlier, this is our chance to see who the real contenders are and who the pretenders are.
Right, I've just counted. I think there could be 5 really close games, which speaks volumes of where some teams are and where we think they're going. Definitely this week, the games of the week should be a lot closer than last week's, which is always great, because you don't want to hype up a game and then have it fall flat I mean,
if it happens, it
it
happens.
happens. Right. If it happens, it happens. But these 2 games this week should be real dandies to get to.
And so far, we've been wrong on our Northwest game of the week.
Right.
I mean, they were the game of the week.
Right. But yeah, I mean, if you get a chance to catch either game of the week, that'd be a great place to go.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, even the Du-Pec EPC game,
right.
That could be an interesting matchup. Amboy West Carroll could be another really good game as well. And then Galena River Ridge.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is what we like to see, though.
Yeah. Like you said, 5 games. There they are. The 2 games of the weeks, and then those 3 games I just listed. Those are the 5 games that you definitely want to get to. Obviously, if you support one of the other teams that we did not mention, that's fine. Go and support that teams. You got to get out there and support your town, your team, your kids, whatever. We get that. But if you're not committed to somebody, take a look at one of those 5 matchups and take a look and see what they got going on.
Right.
And then don't forget that the Orangeville game's on Saturday this week at 3 o'clock. So you can get down to Orangeville for that one.
Gets an extra game this week, so that's always nice.
So, should be another great week of NUIC football this week. Get out to the game, support your town, support these kids. As always, root for the NUIC.